Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Rugged Edge Survival Guide, a Premio podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and folks, thank you so much for jumping back into the show today. It's been a hot minute since our last episode, but it's great to be back in front of the mic with the Premio team, covering some of the most important updates from tech to transformational trends that are shaping the world of edge computing. So thank you again for joining us on today's episode. We have quite a bit to cover, but before we get into the meat, I want to make sure you're all caught up on previous content and that you've got all the resources you need to supplement our conversation today. So make sure you're heading to our website, premioinc.com. Again, that's premioinc.com. You'll find previous episodes of the show as well as other resources like videos, blogs, white papers, you name it, all there on the site. Go ahead and head there as you're listening to today's conversation, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for previous episodes and notifications when we drop new ones. So, folks, I'm excited for today's conversation because we are beginning an important content journey with this episode of the podcast down the road to ISC West 2023 in Las Vegas, which is the premier international show for all things security and public safety. So if you're unfamiliar with the show, ISC West acts as a key hub for the security industry, which allows innovators across the digital and physical security world to connect, to share updates to the latest technologies and everything from access controls to alarms and monitoring to digital surveillance, robotics, cybersecurity, and connected IoT. And of course, Premio's got to make an appearance. We will be there at the show, and at the end of the podcast, we'll get a little more info on where you can find us. But there's another deeper reason why Premio is eyeing ISC West this year, beyond just being there at the show. And that's that the security landscape is in the midst of a massive transformation. Both physical and digital security systems are advancing their data visibility, their decentralized networks, their actual monitoring technology. And with all of that, they're requiring more powerful network and compute infrastructure to support these evolving and more complex and rugged systems. So increased and more robust edge computing needs are obviously where Premio's expertise and product suite comes into focus, and where we hope to offer some important analysis here and with some other content related to ISC West of where edge computing can support the next era of public safety technologies and ecosystems. So this episode is just the first part of a larger content series that we're going to be releasing over the course of the next several weeks as Premio heads and showcases at ISC West 2023. So this first episode is going to give you that high-level overview of security and surveillance trends in the Industry 4.0 age to hopefully lay the groundwork of what's shaping the industry's compute needs today, how Premio is tackling those needs with its approach to rugged edge computing solutions and strategies. And we'll also offer a teaser for what to expect from Premio at ISC West, because we have some new products that are directly linked and supporting some of these transformational changes to the Industry 4.0 ecosystem and the security landscape. So let's dive in and get to the meat of the podcast. I'm pleased to welcome our frequent guest and the orchestrator of this content journey, Premio's own Dustin Seetoo, Director of Product Marketing. Dustin, great to have you back on. Great to be chatting again. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Daniel. It's really great to be back on the podcast to talk about all the great trends that are happening specifically for ISC West, but also security and surveillance.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's a pleasure getting to sit down. And, like we mentioned here in the intro, there's a lot of content to be had from our ISC West journey. And I know we really wanted to use this podcast to paint that bigger picture and try to set the tone for, what the larger trends are that are shaping the industry. So
Sure.
Let's kick it off and jump right into it, Dustin. I know you've been, really plugged into this market for a while now to better understand its needs and how Premio can support. So go ahead and break down, what you've been noticing, right? At a high level and from your perspective and your research, what are some of the main changes that you see shaping the security and the surveillance vertical today?
Sure. So I think if you kind of look at the overall market in general, a lot of the applications are dictated by some key reasons that really drive the success for these applications. One being crime prevention, threats and risk potential for potential harm. You have public safety for monitoring public transportation, public assets. business operations, right? Monitoring employees and seeing what they're doing, if they're doing things correctly, and then obviously the potential equipment malfunction. But last but not least, I think the biggest growth and where we're starting to see a trend is what I see is data analytics. And when I say data analytics, you're starting to see the shift of compute resources being moved into more AI models. And this AI models are able to provide a lot of intelligence. And this is actually tied into the bigger trend of edge compute, right? Where a lot of this compute power is moving away from the cloud closer to these IoT sensors, cameras. And this is where you're able to now extract a lot of the data in real time. And that's huge for security and surveillance. I would say in the past month, there's been a lot of news, right, about the background of AI. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, I kind of follow him in a lot of his thought leadership. He wrote in his blog, Gate Notes, that we are now officially in the age of AI. And this age of AI is just as impactful as the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone. NVIDIA, the leader of all GPUs and hardware specifically, in his keynote in his GTC conference, also mentioned that AI is at the iPhone moment. So if you kind of take a step back and you think of the stage that we're in at a high level, you would think that a lot of the technology experts believe that we're in this new revolutionary stage. And a lot of that processing, a lot of that data really stems into these new AI models that are being used for machine learning. I'm sure you're familiar with ChatGPT and kind of all the news around that. Behind all that is a natural language processing model that is heavily stemmed with AI. And that is where there's so many different benefits that, as humans now, we are unable to foresee. But as we continue to kind of develop a lot of those AI models, we're starting to see a lot of these used in business applications in the real world. So how does that really tie into the analytics and the emergence of AI and how it relates to security and surveillance? So kind of a quick breakdown, right? If you think about security and surveillance, traditional CCTV or closed circuit television networks, right? We're very analog. So if you think of your security guard who's sitting in a box somewhere and he's literally reviewing footage of things that are coming in to detect any harm, right? With that history of kind of IP video, IP video was a huge game changer for security and surveillance because you're now able to use IP cameras that were dialed into networks. And these actually translated into the bigger sector of video management systems. And video management systems now pushed large servers or network video recorders into centralized locations. And that is basically where cloud computing became such a huge benefit to basically analyze a lot of that data. But one of the drawbacks of that is when you have all this data that's being recorded and you're trying to collect that data, process that data, there is a latency issue and a bandwidth issue and cost issue when you need to move it from the camera all the way back into the cloud. So kind of where we are today, a lot of the newer technology is shifting away from the cloud. Doesn't mean the cloud's not going to go anywhere. It's still going to be reserved for a lot of the deep learning type of AI models. But when you move a lot of this compute power closer to the edge or closer to these sensors or IoT sensors, this is where you're starting to get a lot of this decentralized distribution of compute. And this is where edge computing is starting to develop new applications for image detection, object detection, facial recognition happening in real time. So this is huge for this market.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought it up there in your answer, right? The sort of traditional methods, the technology infrastructures, and quite literally just like the operations of running a security or surveillance outfit for a business, a municipality, an event center, whatever it might be, are shifting a lot. And in a lot of ways, the security ecosystem is just finding new markets to break into anyways, right? The legacy markets are evolving, but new realms are finding utility in a higher level of surveillance, an expanded vision of what surveillance even means, and taking that data and analytics and making actionable decisions on it. So I'm curious if you can break that down for us a little more, right? How is the market segment of security and surveillance expanding, right? Where are there some relatively new deployments and use cases for this next generation of security devices and operations and workflows? What are you seeing?
Sure. So I like to follow kind of statistics based on like a lot of major leading market analysts. So one data point, a statistic I like to use that they've put together it's from Gartner. 75% of data is actually processed outside the cloud by 2025. Right. So if you look at that, 75% of that data is actually extremely important. It's significant, but it's a lot of data. Right. And that data kind of shows that why is there a reason that this data needs to be processed away from the cloud closer to the data generation? And that's because if you're able to do that in real time, you're able to make decisions very quickly. And from those decisions, you can actually do actionable results, and gives you the intelligence that you're trying to get out of the analytics. So putting that back into the picture of security and surveillance, it has always relied on data, whether it be traditional video management systems, moving data back and forth in the cloud to do analysis. It's always been on that data. But where we are now, again, is that you have this new sensor technology, high resolution cameras, and all these type of data. They're pushing it into these video streams, into these new edge computing frameworks that are sitting closer for that analysis. So, I mean, really what we're at the forefront of this change and the expansion, right, that is heavily diving into deep learning and edge compute. Deep learning traditionally is always trained in the cloud for the AI models, but once it's been proven, you're now moving that closer to the data generation, and then you can do the processing extremely fast. So a lot of this new AI technology is now being able to provide intelligent analysis for multiple video streams, specifically for real-time object detection and even like facial recognition. But really, if you kind of think about the industry as a whole, why this is able to happen is because you're having these push and pulls from the latest transformative technologies. Like I mentioned, edge compute, edge AI, even the wireless connectivity through 5G, culminating all together. And that's driving a lot of the major vehicles for these major use cases that are using the intelligence with computer vision to really drive their AI models. So, some of the major things for the use cases that we're starting to see really move into edge analytics. And edge analytics really are diving into some use cases that heavily focus on, for example, person detection, biometric security. I've been doing a lot of traveling in and out of the country, and you're starting to realize that they're removing the element of humans checking passports. They're using biometric security, and you're going through a lot of these checkpoints with your passport, with computer vision, with a camera, and that's being able to manage the security clearance as you go through each of these custom clearances. Emergency management for natural disasters. We have a few customers that do natural disaster protection. They're basically using also computer vision with edge compute to basically detect if there's any type of fire disasters, and you can actually send first responders pretty quickly. Another example would be vehicle identification, license plates reader, intrusion detection and virtual fencing, right? That's important for security and surveillance. And obviously, dangerous objects and weapons detection is another major type of use case.
And now to connect the dots a little bit more from your first answer to your second answer here, what are those, I guess, connective tissues, right? The threads that are linking those market expansions with the larger trends that are shaping the security ecosystem. And with those, connective threads, where are they connecting with the need for more robust and rugged edge computing solutions, right? What is unique about these expansions that requires more sort of on-site, rugged deployments of computing and processing power?
Yeah, so the keyword there is the trends, right? What is the larger trends? So I always kind of go back to kind of the market research and kind of seeing where we are currently and how that's growing. So Gartner also kind of put together, and it's year to year, but they put together kind of an impact radar of emerging technologies and technologies that are shaping specific market expansions. And in 2023, currently, the two biggest type of impacts based on that radar is edge AI and edge computer vision, right? So by utilizing the computer vision technology, funneling that into compute architecture, sitting close to where the data is being generated, that is where you're starting to see the biggest opportunities to basically take the intelligence with video analytics with AI models in real time. So I think three key reasons why we're starting to see these major trends shape the security industry. Number one would be the maturity of neural networks. Um, Before, neural networks took a lot of time and a lot of compute power to kind of train. But when we're at the maturity of neural networks, they now are more open source, that anyone general purpose, applications can build their applications based on these neural networks. And once they're able to build those use cases for these neural networks, they're able to scale that into real business applications. And this is where you're starting to see, ChatGPT with natural language processing, chatbots, with computer vision, specific image processing. And these are things that are like major driving forces. A second major type of trend that's shaping the security industry would be the major advances in compute infrastructure. So a lot of the back-end side of these applications really require robust hardware. And a lot of that robust hardware does dive into a lot of the accelerated computing. And when we talk about accelerated computing, it's an ecosystem of different things doing a lot of different domain-specific type of compute in order to drive these newer type of AI models. That can be from your CPU, that can be from your GPU. And now you have newer technologies, which are specifically called domain-specific architectures, specifically designed to run AI models for inference at the edge. The last major trend would be the proliferation and the adoption of IoT devices. So IoT devices are kind of your sensors, or the senses of the eyes out before the data is being funneled into it. So when you're able to collect all this data, now you have the ability to process, to manipulate, to take insights that you want from these data. So the question I think that's important to ask is, how are these trends connecting into more robust and rugged edge computing solutions? And really, it's because there's a need for this reliable, high performance compute that's able to now process, store, analyze data in real time. And that's the major trend that's happening with edge compute, specifically for security and surveillance.
So then where does Premio operate in this market segment, right? Obviously, y'all have built your name and your presence in this industry by planting a flag and creating some of the best solutions in the rugged edge ecosystem. In fact, y'all really, I think, coined that term and pushed it forward, rugged edge, in the first place, right? Which, everyone's familiar with the edge, but when we talk rugged edge, we're talking about compute solutions that are in some of the most difficult environments, or are needing technology to support processing that brings heavy loads onto the hardware itself. So I'm curious where you see Premio already operating in this market segment, where you imagine Premio will continue to operate in this segment moving forward, right? Where are you wanting to expand into, and how does your product suite connect with the current and the coming compute demands in security and surveillance?
Oh yeah, thank you. No, well said. But really, I think it's our knowledge and experience being specifically focused in compute for 30 plus years. Within those 30 plus years, there's ebbs and flows on what's needed in the market. But if you really pay attention to kind of the customers and their pain points, they really are kind of giving you insight into what the market is looking for. So when we've coined rugged edge computing, we've kind of realized that early on, a lot of the applications and the customers that we're dealing with, we're trying to access that data in real time. But oftentimes the environments were often harsh, or it'd be in a manufacturing environment where it's not as stable. So one of the most important things is to basically take what is available from the compute architecture, make it hardened and ruggedized in order for it to run reliably for their application. So I would say from a hardware perspective, many of these new edge demands or edge computing demands are moving out into these environments where the computer needs to be 100% stable. And as we kind of define our product portfolio, we really try to balance a lot of our product positioning, whether to fit into that specific market space. So In general, Premio does provide industrial grade computing solutions for security and surveillance, being that they can act as rugged NVRs. They also are now being used as AI edge inference computers to do the inference detection on security footage or video streams coming into the box, or even a small low power IoT data telemetry gateway that's passing the data, to and from the different ecosystem or the different layers of the edge into the cloud.
Yeah, to your point, Premio has been on the pulse for the last 30 years, and staying ahead of that curve and maintaining the kind of industry knowledge, reputation, right, that Premio has means that y'all are developing solutions for the next layer, the coming layer, and the most pressing layer of technologies that will improve and expand what processing even can do, and sort of the vision of edge computing in general. So one of those major trends is the use of machine learning, artificial intelligence in computing and in processing. And so before we get into sort of the Premio hardware that's supporting that next layer, can you reiterate for our audience here the significance of that trend, right? Where are we seeing, and maybe why are we seeing machine learning and AI implemented into security and surveillance solutions? What are sort of the use cases that are demanding this layer of technology, and what value is it bringing to the ecosystem?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think Edge AI is only going to continue to grow. I think Gartner, as I mentioned, has pinpointed it as a impactful trend of emerging technology specifically now, and it continues to grow. But really, I think why Edge AI is starting to become more important is because of the automation parts of it. You're able to now do a lot of things, or applications are now being able to process data in real time. And when you're able to process a lot of that data in real time, you're able to actually move a lot of these AI models into a lot of the inference detection. Traditionally, in order even to get to an inference, a lot of these edge AI models are traditionally trained in the cloud. And the cloud is a beast of a technology that's always going to be there in order to train these AI models, because you have the stable resources, you have all the compute power, high performance network, all that really kind of, doing the training continuously to build these models. But when it becomes scalable, when it becomes a real world application, these deep learning models and these neural network models get moved into a level of inference. And that's where I think inference detection is becoming a huge opportunity specifically for security and surveillance. The difference in inference is that the AI model is no longer has to be trained. It already has somewhat of that intelligence. So when it gets moved out to the edge, based on the data that's funneling in from a lot of these IoT sensors, there is a required hardware, which is edge AI type of boxes that have the compute power locally to decipher and able to use the inference model on that box, and it has the necessary compute power to drive that level of intelligence.
So then where does Premio fit into that ecosystem, right? As edge AI becomes more possible, validated, and becomes a standard in the Industry 4.0 age of security and surveillance solutions, what kind of hardware is required to implement that kind of edge AI at scale? And break down how that actually changes maybe the cost of deployments, right? The performance of deployments.
Sure.
Connect those dots for us.
So there's a lot of layers to this question, and there's not going to be a right or wrong on the type of hardware that is required to implement edge AI, because that really dives into the overall application and what's the goal of the application. So what I want to do is to kind of, instead of listing out here's all the hardware, whether it be in the cloud for this and all the way out to the edge, I think it's probably more important to kind of define what are the technology drivers, whether it be at the cloud or the edge, that are providing enormous benefits in terms of performance and cost, right? So I think the most important thing to really focus on of edge AI and why that hardware is important is what it's doing as what it's doing as an actual application, right? So edge AI boxes, why they're starting to become so prevalent and more important as you move away from the cloud into compute, is because simply they're lowering they're lowering the latency and the bandwidth, because the processing is being done locally on the box instead of transmitting all this data back and forth into the cloud. So to really kind of dive into what are some of these technology drivers that are beneficial for a lot of the edge AI and security and surveillances, number one would be, I would say, IoT sensors. So these IoT sensors are your high resolution cameras, and these high resolution cameras, can be in 4K. There's also other sensors that are huge in security and surveillance that are starting to kind of come onto the map based on LiDAR technology. And all of these things, if you think about it, these sensor technologies are basically creating a 3D map of the environment. And it's basically providing a situational awareness of the environment. So if you think of those as your eyes of kind of the body and taking in a lot of that sensory data, there needs to be a level of computational layer that's able to process that data. So I would say the second major technology driver is some level of industrial compute. So when you're using computing, whether it be low power or high performance, there's always key technology drivers that stem from either your traditional CPUs, your GPUs, your TPUs, and your VPUs. And all this type of processing data is based on semiconductor silicon that's able to process the data and provide accelerated computing in a very efficient and very specific way. Another major part of that compute and industrial compute that's important in security and surveillance, obviously, would be the storage capacity. If you think about all the data that's funneling in from the eyes, all that data needs to be stored. So whether that be in traditional, SATA storage, or now, high performance, high read NVMe storage, you need to have high speed storage, but redundant storage in order to basically access that data and have a repository for the data, specifically for security and surveillance. Another major technology driver would be the high-speed connectivity. High-speed connectivity can either be through your gigabit, 10 gigabit, all the way up to even 100 gig hardwire. And this is where you're able to move a lot of this data, from the box. That's the performance on the box, outside the box, in order to use that data for other type of processing or other type of analytics that you're trying to extract. Wireless connectivity is another major technology driver. As you move into these environments that are more remote, you might not have the ability to use, traditional hardwire. So, with the explosion of 5G, you're having, a lot ultra low latency, machine to machine communication. All these things in those environments are allowing these IoT sensors, these computes, architectures to communicate frequently, pass data back and forth, and have that interaction. And then last but not least, I would say a major technology driver would be the input and output. So the IO connectivity is important, because this is where you're having the vehicular highway for a lot of this data to pass through. So whether it'd be an analog type of data or even a digital type of data, you need to have that built into the edge AI box as a technology driver. So really, kind of in summary, if you kind of take all these technology drivers and kind of culminate that into a whole, that's exactly what Premio provides, right? What we're trying to do is take all these trends that we're starting to see, the market demands, the technology drivers, and really put together a hardened and trusted ruggedized solution that's able to process a lot of this data in real time with reliability.
I mean, the ecosystem you just described is complex, and there are a lot of challenges in implementing, that level of hardware with that kind of intention, specifically for AI computing needs, and doing so correctly, and doing so in a way that also future proofs. A lot of the applications that we see evolve almost in real time. So I'm curious how Premio has tried to tackle some of those obstacles to providing AI technologies at the edge and doing so at scale. What's y'all's approach to maneuvering that ecosystem, acknowledging the trends, translating that into specific hardware applications, and then, actually creating these hardware applications and, doing so with performance in mind.
Sure. So I think just as a reminder, so in general, Premio provides standard off-the-shelf industrial computing solutions, and there's a portfolio of ruggedized x86 specifically computing solutions that range from low power type of processing all the way to high performance type of edge AI type of things. And this product portfolio as a whole, as I mentioned, are specifically designed with specific requirements that meet major trends in IoT, edge, and cloud compute, right? So ultimately, our main mission is, when we're looking at the market, is to evaluate all these emerging trends and really sit down with the technical and engineering team to put together a reliable industrial computing solution that meets these demands. So, in principle, this is the same applied when we talk about security and surveillance, right? So if you look at security and surveillance, what are the most important technology drivers that I mentioned, right? You have your sensors, you have compute, you have IO, you have wireless connectivity, you have storage, right? If you look at all those type of things, you need to now pull those into your designs and provide a solution for the market. So we do this in specific ways. Number one, we look at all those technology drivers to make sure and ensure that we have a balanced workload consolidation. How that's being done is that we make sure to pull in our industrial computing solutions the latest and greatest transformative technologies, and that's able to enable the faster processing, better memory, more redundant storage, and ultimately faster connectivity. And then last but not least, we always talk about the rugged edge computing side of it, and a key design principle that's across our entire portfolio of industrial computers is that they are ruggedized and hardened to be deployed in these harsh environments, which is very different than your standard desktop computer that's sitting in an office somewhere, right? So these computers, from the design itself, are designed for wide temperatures, shock and vibration, power and stability, ingress protection. So kind of what we like to say within the Premio portfolio is a lot of our products are built rugged and built ready.
Rugged and ready. I think that's the best tagline that I could come up with for Premio, because not only are your solutions prepared for the coming trends that are shaping the world of computing, but they're also prepared for specific individual applications that are high stress, that will put a lot of load on the computing hardware, and that strain is what informs your vision for quality designs, quality products, and a quality product suite.
Yeah, so I think one obstacle that I wanted to share with you, right, and what we're doing differently, specifically for Edge AI, really stems into how we're managing the hardware acceleration that's able to do the inference detection. So one thing I wanted to share, right, is traditionally people in the security and surveillance market who are starting to tap into a lot of these edge AI do realize that there is a need for hardware acceleration. And that hardware acceleration does come from the notoriety and the recognition of GPUs. So GPUs, whether it be in the cloud, have always been trusted and reliable to run these AI models, to train these deep learning models. This has also been proven as you move those AI models into, like I mentioned, the edge level where you're doing the inference. The GPU does have that horsepower to actually do the detection with all these different type of video streams that are coming in. But one challenge as an industrial compute manufacturer for 30 years, and you realize that our main goal, like I mentioned, is always to have a ruggedized and industrial grade computing solution. But when you do introduce GPUs into the mix of the design, there is a challenge of the thermal regulation and the heat dissipation, right? And a simple solution to that, and this is amongst all industrial computer manufacturers, there's no way around it, is you actually have to provide active cooling. And which is kind of interesting, right? As an industrial grade computing, we pride ourselves on coming up with these innovative designs that are often passively cooled or fanless, and we don't use active cooling, right? So if you think about that, it's kind of counterintuitive to how we design our fanless boxes, right? When we put a GPU into it, now we have to add a fan. So that kind of shows that the market is asking for different requirements, and that's what Edge AI is doing, right? It's pushing these newer compute workloads into areas where there's not necessarily a need for it, and you're trying to find ways to do the hardware acceleration. And on top of that, when you do use GPUs, they're very expensive as you move them into specific applications and security and surveillance. So I think one obstacle that as Premio and what we decided to do was to evaluate what's available from hardware acceleration, whether it be GPU and TPUs. And with something that's new in the market that's different than GPUs, are your domain-specific architecture of TPUs that are in an M2 form factor. And why these are, I didn't say good or better than GPUs, is they're different, right? They're different because they've been designed from a lower power, number one. It provides decent amount of performance in terms of TOPS. And really, they're small form factor, and you're able to kind of put that into the design. So what we've done is we've actually used a modular design that's able to scale with these TPUs into our fanless ruggedized boxes to deliver a decent amount of TOPS performance and edge AI. And that's something that we are doing differently that's interesting in the Premio portfolio of products.
I think that leads us perfectly into some more ISC West conversations, because we're going to get to see those products in action and on display at ISC West 2023 this year. You'll be there. I'll actually be there myself. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing them in person and interacting with other exhibitors and attendees who are interested in what Premio is bringing to the surveillance and security market. So just at a high level too, we'll kind of bring it back around. What are you excited about for this year's show? I mean, obviously, we can get in the weeds here on Premio's products in a sec, but just, more generally, what are you hoping to get out of your presence at the show and connecting with other industry pros?
Yeah, so I'll keep it high level, but I think every year it's amazing to see how fast technology continues to change. I mean, you think within a year it's not much time, but you go back each year and you see these new amazing applications, and you see discussing challenges and pain points with a lot of the new customers that are coming. You really get to understand that it's an evolving landscape. And, it's our job as a industrial grade manufacturer is to be cautious and aware of a lot of this demand in order to put together solutions that are meeting more of the challenges, right? So for me personally, I think I touched on it in the podcast, but I'm most interested to kind of see how that data analytics is now being used for more intelligence, right? What type of things with data are you able to now build out newer applications for security and surveillance?
And what would you say is special about Premio's presence at the show this year? Based on some of your previous experiences. Premio has been at the show before, right?
Sure. We've
Yeah. Okay.
we've
Great.
been to the show multiple years.
Perfect.
But I would say
So then, yeah, what's then with that in mind? Sorry to interrupt again, but what would you say is different about this year's presence, right? How does your technology suite, or even just kind of the mindset that Premio is bringing to the show, how does it look a little different than previous years?
Yeah, so it really kind of culminates into what I've been talking about in this podcast, right? There is this new demand for more processing at the edge. And what we've done is always to evaluate the market and put together a portfolio or a suite of products that can tap into these markets at different applications. So when we go to these shows specifically, we are there to kind of showcase some of our industrial grade designs and what we're doing differently and what we're doing uniquely in order to push a lot of these rugged industrial fanless boxes specifically for growing trends like edge AI. So I think one of the major goals, right, as a leader in industrial computing is to really showcase the leadership in how we combine the major technology drivers to address specific concerns. And I think certainly a topic of discussion that a lot of people are going to have at this show is how are they able to now use different type of compute power away from the cloud for their applications. And ultimately by being at the show, we have our engineering team, we have product experts and technical experts there to really showcase our x86 computing solutions by providing off-the-shelf solutions that help the customers reduce their time to market that they can use very quickly within their application.
Well, as we begin to wrap up the conversation, then let's give our audience a little bit of a teaser for what they can expect to see at this year's show from Premio. We'll actually cover this more in depth in a lot of the further, kind of coming content out of the show. We're going to be doing a lot of videos, interviews from the trade show booth, breaking down your product suite this year. But I want to tease out that list and get a high level look at what's to come. So what are some of these new products that Premio is going to be showcasing at ISC West 2023? And give us, at least one connective thread with how you see them connecting with the core trends that are shaping security and surveillance. So we'll start first with the RCO 6000 CML. Give us your thoughts there on that product, and we'll go down the line.
No, sure. Yeah. I mean, industrial computing hardware is probably better to explain by physically touching and seeing it, right? But I think I can definitely do a quick rundown of kind of why that product is important. So our RCO 6000 CML is our flagship high performance edge inference computer. Why this product is so important actually for this specific market is we actually won an award for this previous generation in 2021 for a specific design that we did called our Edge Boost nodes. So what we did differently in the market is that we created a two-piece modular design to where the top portion of the box is your standard industrial grade fanless PC. But that bottom piece, we created Edge Boost nodes because we realized that different applications required GPUs, required NVMe storage. So these bottom nodes, different variations or flavors of this allows the customer to mix and match based on what they need, but still maintain an industrial compute. And as they move generationally, for example, in this generation, which is the follow-up to that award, which is the RCO 6000 CML, you now have a faster processor, better more memory, a variety of I/O that's still able to mix in with a lot of these Edge Boost I/O nodes. But specifically, this product for security and surveillance is being used, and we've designed it in a way focused on a network video recorder, a rugged network video and VR computer, specifically for the reasons that it has high-speed NVMe storage. We've included a hardware RAID controller. We've also included the ability for a high-speed PCIe expansion for high-speed network cards in order to move a lot of that data processing outside the box. And then last but not least, like I mentioned, we can support Edge Boost I/O modules specifically for our M2 TPU accelerators that won't require the the thermals of a GPU.
And there's other products in that RCO suite. We also have the RCO 3000 CML and the RCO 1000 EHL. What are the differences there?
Yeah, so the 1000, 3000, 6000, think of it as kind of a portfolio of from low power processing all the way to high performance. So the RCO 6000 CML being your highest performance with the most I/O, most processing, most capabilities, most storage capacity. And then if you go to the RCO 3000 CML, this is kind of like the smaller brother of the 6000. And that major difference is that reduction in size. A lot of these newer applications are space constrained. And if they're in remote locations, they do prefer to have a smaller box. So the benefit of this is that you're still getting a pretty solid multi-core processing based on Intel's 10th gen architecture. You're also able to have support an Edge Boost I/O module, and that Edge Boost I/O module can support a mix and match of our proprietary daughter boards or carry boards that support more I/O, whether it be RJ45, M12, USB, 10 gigabit, and then the most recent and most latest would be these Edge Boost I/O modules specifically that allows for M2 acceleration TPUs. And the RCO 1000 Elkhart Lake is our smallest palm-sized fanless mini computer. This specific computer is very unique because, number one, of the size, decent amount of compute power in Intel's Elkhart Lake IoT specifically designed semiconductor processor. But really, this fanless mini computer also incorporates our Edge Boost I/O modules that allow you to also mix and match specific type of I/Os in definitely a very small form factor.
And you teed me up perfectly there. You brought up the modular solutions, the Edge Boost I/O modules that integrate with your primary industrial computers, and then enhance the plug and play expandability of all of these modules. What's fresh or new about these Edge Boost I/O modules, and how do you see them playing a critical role in future proofing and creating some evolutionary capacity in these computing solutions in surveillance and security markets?
Yeah, so we always try to think of a solution from a customer's perspective that can allow them to be better successful or better flexible or scalable in their market and application. And one way we do that is being able to create modular designs, and modular designs provide an element of that scale for the customers because they can decide based on their application what they need and kind of mix and match and kind of plug and play into our specific brackets that we've designed in our products. So I think Edge Boost IO modules are one of the newest and latest things that we're bringing into the security and surveillance market and sharing with a lot of the newer customer demands, the ability that they're able to get. So one being Edge AI and storage, if they're looking for more IO connectivity. Last but not least, if they're just looking for hardwire connectivity, even within that suite, there's ruggedized ingress protection through M12 connectors. So you can kind of get a sense. I mean, it's hard to kind of gauge that in a podcast, but the key takeaway is by offering modular solutions, it allows the customer to be flexible in what they're looking for in an industrial computer versus fixed IO on a other solution.
Well, I'm excited to see all of that and more at Premio's booth this year at ISC West 2023. So I think we've done a good job of laying the foundations here and painting an intro picture for the major trends, how Premio fits into that market. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we can further unpack some of these use cases and where we're already seeing some of Premio's edge computing solutions already deployed in security and surveillance operations. It's going to be a great time, and I hope folks listening can find us at the show. So we'll go ahead and leave them with some handy tips and strategies for finding us. Dustin, can you let our listeners know where they can find us at the show, how they can connect, and just generally what they can expect from us at the show?
Sure. First off, thank you for chiming into the podcast and listening to kind of everything that we have to say about edge compute and the trends and some of the products that are providing to the market. But if you are interested specifically in security and surveillance for ISC West, please definitely check out our event page that we have. We basically have a lot of information about the show, but we also dive into the trends that mentioned in this podcast, but specifically, what are the products that we see from our suite that can fit a lot of these newer demands. And then last but not least, if you're physically going to the show, please check us out at booth 3071. We're going to have all our products there. We're going to have live application demos with some of our key partners showcasing their technology drivers. And last but not least, we'll have Daniel there with us to kind of talk about all the cool trends that are shaping security and surveillance.
It's going to be a great time. I'm looking forward to meeting some of y'all there at the show as well. And we're going to be hosting lots of conversations, getting y'all's thoughts on where you see some of Premio's solutions best supporting these emerging trends in the security and surveillance market. So I'm looking forward to more, but we'll go ahead and cap it there. There's more to come. So folks, make sure that you're subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for all of our coverage from ISC West 2023, but also for previous episodes that help paint a larger picture of where Premio's evolutions have been charted right in the past, and some of the previous applications that I think link up nicely with what we're going to be talking about here today. You can also head to our website, premioinc.com. Again, premioinc.com for more information on our solutions and services, more information on ISC West 2023. You'll also find plenty of our video content there once we do post it post-show. And with that, Dustin Seetoo, Director of Product Marketing at Premio. Thank you so much for your time on the show today, man. It's really been a pleasure getting to pick your brain, and I'm looking forward to more at ISC West. So I'll see you out there in Vegas very soon.
Thank you. Safe travels. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you everyone for tuning into the show. This has been another episode of the Rugged Edge Survival Guide, a Premio podcast. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to head to our website, and we'll catch you at ISC West 2023.